Wine explodes across her uniform, everyone laughs. But when the Mafia boss steps out of the shadows, the room freezes. He doesn't shout. He chooses his target. And what he does next makes the Vance family wish they never touched her. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. Alright, let's get back into it. The crystal chandeliers of the Monteleone ballroom cast golden light across polished marble floors, illuminating a sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Wealth whispered through every corner of the room in the champagne fountains, the live orchestra, the silent auction tables lined with vacation packages worth more than most people's yearly salaries. Michelle Hill balanced her serving tray with both hands, weaving carefully between clusters of guests who didn't bother stepping aside. 21 years old, first-generation American, first real job in the city that actually mattered. Her black dress and white apron marked her as staff, invisible to the people who moved past her like she was part of the furniture. "Don't mess this up," she'd told herself in the mirror that morning. "This is your shot." The agency had been clear. High-profile events meant high-profile tips. Keep your head down. Smile when spoken to. And for God's sake, don't drop anything in front of someone important. Michelle delivered another round of hors d'oeuvres to a group of women dripping in diamonds, their conversation flowing around her like she didn't exist. She caught fragments: Aspen, the Mediterranean. My decorator is impossible, and felt the familiar ache of being close to a world she'd never touch. Her feet already hurt in the required heels. Sweat gathered at the small of her back, despite the ballroom's perfect climate control. But she smiled, nodded, kept moving. Then she heard it. "Hey!" The voice cut through the ambient chatter like a blade. Michelle turned instinctively. Adrian Vance stood 3 feet away, crystal goblet in hand, his prep school blazer worn with calculated carelessness. 19 years old, with the kind of face that had never heard the word no. Sharp jaw, styled dark hair, eyes that gleamed with something cruel and bored. Behind him, a small crowd of similarly dressed young men held up their phones. Michelle's stomach dropped. She'd seen enough viral videos to know what this looked like. "Yes, sir?" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Can I get you something?" Adrian's smile widened. He swirled the wine in his goblet, the red liquid catching the light. "Yeah, stand still. I want to see how filthy someone like you looks in real crystal." Michelle's breath caught. I don't understand. Let's see how well the help scrubs." He tilted the goblet. Time slowed. Dark red wine arced through the air, expensive Cabernet, the kind that cost more than her week's rent, and crashed over her head in a cold, shocking wave. It soaked through her hair, ran down her face, stained her white collar crimson. Droplets splattered across the marble floor. Gasps rippled through the nearby guests. Phones lifted higher. Someone laughed. Michelle stood frozen, hands still gripping her serving tray, wine dripping from her chin. The humiliation burned hotter than fire, spreading through her chest, up her neck, into her face. Tears gathered hot behind her eyes. "Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't give them that." But she couldn't stop it. The tears came anyway, mixing with the wine, sliding down her cheeks while 200 people watched. "Bravo, darling." Vivian Vance pushed through the crowd, designer gown shimmering, champagne flute in one hand and phone in the other. She was filming, actually filming her son's cruelty like it was performance art. "She should thank you," Vivian cooed, circling Michelle like a predator. "That's the closest she'll ever get to a $100 bottle." Adrian bowed theatrically. His friends applauded. More phones appeared, recording, posting, sharing in real time. Harold Vance appeared next to his wife, salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, tuxedo immaculate. He looked Michelle up and down with cold assessment. "Try not to stain the carpet," he murmured, swirling his whiskey. "These galas weren't designed for your kind." Michelle's vision blurred. She wanted to scream, to throw the tray, to run anything but stand there drowning in shame while they laughed. Her whole body trembled. "This is what happens when you try to climb," a voice whispered in her head. "This is what they think of you." The crowd pressed closer, a wall of expensive perfume and judgment. Someone whispered about her uniform. Someone else asked who let the staff get so close to the guests. No one helped. No one said stop. Adrian raised his empty goblet like a trophy. "Anyone else want to tip the help?" Then the laughter died. A figure stepped forward from the shadows near the back entrance, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of quiet authority that made people instinctively move aside. Cupido Bruno. Even Michelle, new to the city, knew the name, knew the rumors. The man who controlled territory the police wouldn't touch. The one you didn't cross unless you had a death wish. He wore an immaculate black suit, tattoos visible on both hands, dark hair slicked back. His face could have been carved from stone, handsome in a dangerous way, with steel gray eyes that cut through the room like winter. The crowd parted as he walked directly toward Michelle. Without a word, he pulled a black silk handkerchief from his pocket and gently, impossibly gently for a man with his reputation, wiped wine from her cheek. His voice was low, controlled, deadly calm. "Pick on someone who picks back." Adrian's smirk faltered. Vivian lowered her phone slightly. Harold's expression went carefully blank. Cupido turned to face the Vance family, his body positioned between them and Michelle like a shield. "You just declared war on the wrong person." The ballroom went silent except for the orchestra, still playing obliviously in the corner. Adrian tried to laugh it off. "It was just a joke, man. She's staff. She's a person." Cupido's words landed like stones. "And you will learn that difference." He glanced back at Michelle, his expression softening just slightly. "You're done here tonight. My driver is outside." Then he looked at the Vances, all three of them now pale, frozen, suddenly aware they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. "As for you," Cupido said quietly, "we'll be seeing each other very soon." The promise hung in the air like smoke. Michelle sat in the back of the black Mercedes, still dripping wine onto the leather seats. The driver hadn't spoken since opening the door for her outside. The Monteleone just handed her a towel and pulled smoothly into traffic. She pressed the towel against her face, trying to absorb the humiliation along with the Cabernet. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, neon signs, traffic signals, the glowing facades of restaurants she'd never afford. Everything looked distorted through her tears, like the whole world was melting. This was supposed to be your fresh start. The agency would fire her. Obviously. You didn't survive humiliation at a gala like that and keep getting booked. Word traveled fast in the service industry, that girl who got wine dumped on her, the one who caused a scene, the help who forgot her place. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Michelle pulled it out with trembling fingers. Notifications flooded her screen: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Her stomach turned to ice. At prep school gossip. "Laughing my ass out, Adrian Vance just destroyed some waitress at the Monteleone, #rich kids do it better." The video had already been shared 400 times. Michelle clicked it with numb fingers. Watched herself turn toward Adrian. Watched the wine cascade over her head in slow motion. Watched her face crumple as the crowd laughed. The comments were worse. She probably spilled something on him first. Why was she even that close to guests? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Imagine being that poor lol. Michelle's throat closed. She clicked out of the app, but her hands kept moving, checking Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. The video was spreading like wildfire, each repost adding new layers of mockery. Someone had already made a meme. The driver pulled up outside her apartment building, a converted motel on the edge of the city where the rent was cheap and the neighbors minded their business. Michelle climbed out, still wrapped in the towel, and walked past the flickering vacancy sign. Her studio apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning, full of hope, possibility, the naive belief that tonight would change everything. The irony tasted worse than wine. Michelle locked the door, peeled off her stained uniform, and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. But no amount of soap could wash away what had happened. The humiliation had soaked deeper than her skin. She wrapped herself in her bathrobe, threadbare, bought from a thrift store in Texas, and sat on the edge of her bed. Her phone lit up. Mom calling. Michelle almost didn't answer. But her mother had a sixth sense for when something was wrong. "Mija?" Her mother's voice was warm, concerned. "How was the big event?" Michelle's composure shattered. The tears came in broken, choking sobs. "Mija, what happened? Are you hurt?" Michelle couldn't form words. "Mama, they poured wine on me, in front of everyone. And they laughed. They filmed it and they laughed." Silence on the other end. Then her mother's voice, harder now. "Who did this?" "Rich people. A family, the Vances. Their son, Michelle wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was just working." "Where are you now?" "Home. A man at the event, he sent me home in a car. But Mama, it's already online. Everyone's seen it. I'm a joke." Her mother's breath came sharp through the phone. "Listen to me. You are not a joke. You are my daughter. You are strong. And those people, they are small. Small hearts. small souls. You understand me? But my job. There will be other jobs. Right now I need you to breathe. Can you breathe for me? Michelle nodded, even though her mother couldn't see her. She pulled air into her lungs in shaky gasps. That's my girl, her mother said softly. Now tell me about this man who helped you. Michelle thought about Cupido Bruno the way he'd stepped forward when no one else would. The gentleness in his hands when he wiped her face. The deadly promise in his voice when he spoke to the Vances. I don't know, she whispered. But I think he scared them. Good. Someone should. They talked for another 20 minutes, her mother's voice a lifeline pulling Michelle back from the edge. When they finally hung up, Michelle felt slightly more solid. Like maybe she could survive this. She opened her laptop, hesitated, then searched. Adrian Vance. Page after page of results, society columns, prep school athletics, charity events where he stood beside his parents wearing the same entitled smirk. The Vance family owned half the city's real estate, controlled board positions at major corporations, donated millions to political campaigns. They were untouchable, and she was nobody. Michelle closed the laptop and lay back on her bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. You just declared war on the wrong person, Cupido Bruno had said. But what could one man do, even a dangerous one, against a family like the Vances? Across the city, in a penthouse apartment overlooking the financial district, Adrian Vance scrolled through his phone, watching his follower count climb. Dad, I'm at like 6,000 new followers since tonight, he called out. Harold Vance appeared in the doorway, loosening his bow tie. Just remember, image is everything. That little stunt worked because you controlled the narrative. The help forgets their place, we remind them. Simple. Vivian glided in behind him, already changed into silk pajamas. Did you see Bethany's comment? She said you were savage. That's the word they use now, right? Adrian grinned. Yeah, it's trending. His father poured himself a scotch. Tomorrow the story will be buried under something else, but the lesson sticks. That's how you maintain position. None of them noticed the headline that would appear in the morning business section. Vance Industries stock drops 3% in after-hours trading, investors cite concerns over leadership. None of them knew that Cupido Bruno had already made 3 phone calls, and none of them understood that the wine poured tonight would cost them everything. Michelle woke to pounding on her door. For a moment, she thought she was still dreaming, trapped in the ballroom, wine pouring endlessly, laughter echoing through marble halls. But the pounding continued, sharp and aggressive. She grabbed her phone. 6:47 a.m. Michelle Hill, open up. Security. Her heart lurched. Michelle stumbled out of bed, pulled on yesterday's jeans, and cracked open the door with the chain still attached. 3 men in private security uniforms stood in the hallway. Behind them, 2 police officers. Michelle Hill? The lead security guard, broad-shouldered, crew-cut, expressionless, held up an ID badge. Monteleone Hotel Security. We need you to come with us. I what? Why? One of the police officers stepped forward, older, weathered face. Ma'am, there's been a theft reported. We need to ask you some questions. Theft? I didn't steal anything. Then you won't mind if we take a look inside. Michelle's hands went numb. Do you have a warrant? The security guard's expression hardened. We can do this easy or complicated. Your choice. The officer placed a hand on his belt, near his handcuffs. We have probable cause based on surveillance footage. You can cooperate here, or we can take you to the station and search your residence with a warrant. Either way, this is happening. Michelle's mind raced. She thought about calling someone, but who? Her mother was 1,500 miles away. She didn't have a lawyer, didn't have anyone in this city except... She thought of Cupido Bruno's steel-gray eyes. You just declared war on the wrong person, but he was a stranger. A dangerous stranger who'd helped her once. She couldn't call him. Could she? Fine. Michelle stepped back, hands shaking. But I didn't take anything. They pushed past her into the tiny studio, 5 men filling the space, making it feel even smaller than it was. They moved efficiently, professionally, pulling open drawers, checking under the mattress, rifling through her closet. The lead security guard went straight for her work bag, the black canvas tote she'd carried last night. He unzipped it and pulled out a velvet jewelry box. Michelle's blood turned to ice. That's not mine. The guard opened the box. Inside, a diamond bracelet caught the morning light streaming through her window. Easily 20 carats, platinum setting. The kind of jewelry that cost more than her entire year's rent. That's not mine, Michelle repeated, louder. I've never seen that before. Someone planted it. The officer pulled out handcuffs. Michelle Hill, you're under arrest for grand theft. You have the right to remain silent. I didn't take it, Michelle's voice cracked. Please, I didn't check the cameras. Check anything. I didn't steal that bracelet. We did check the cameras. The security guard pulled out a tablet, turned it toward her. The footage showed the Monteleone ballroom from a high angle. Grainy, black and white. Michelle watched herself move through the crowd with her serving tray, watched herself pause near a table where Vivian Vance had set down her clutch purse. The video showed Michelle's hand reaching toward the purse just for a second, barely visible, then pulling back. No. Michelle shook her head violently. No, I didn't. That's edited. That has to be edited. I never touched her purse. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Had she adjusted something on that table? Had she moved the purse to set down a tray? She couldn't remember. The night was a blur of humiliation and tears. The officer clicked the handcuffs around her wrists. The metal bit cold into her skin. Wait, please. Michelle's voice broke. Just let me call someone. Let me call. You can make your phone call at the station. They walked her out through the apartment building hallway in handcuffs. Her neighbors, the single mother in 2B, the elderly man who always said good morning, stood in their doorways, watching, judging. Michelle kept her head down, tears streaming freely now. The police car smelled like disinfectant and fear. They put her in the back, separated from the front seat by plexiglass. Michelle stared at her reflection in the window, mascara-stained cheeks, tangled hair, the silver handcuffs catching light. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. At the station, they processed her like she was a criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot. Miranda rights read from a laminated card. Everything happened in a fog, questions she couldn't answer. Forms she signed with shaking hands, the cell door closing with a metallic clang that echoed in her chest. She sat on the concrete bench, wrapped her arms around herself, and finally let herself break. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time had stopped meaning anything. Then a guard appeared at the cell door. Hill, you made bail. Michelle looked up, confused. I don't have bail money. Someone posted it. You're free to go. They led her back through processing, handed her a clear plastic bag with her phone and apartment keys. In the waiting area, she expected to see her mother, though she had no idea how her mother could have gotten here so fast, or afforded bail. Instead, Cupido Bruno stood near the window, dressed in a charcoal suit, hands in his pockets. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something Michelle hadn't seen directed at her in 24 hours. Respect. You didn't deserve this, he said simply. Michelle's throat closed. They planted it. The bracelet. I didn't steal anything. I know. How did you know I was here? I know many things, Michelle. Cupido moved toward the exit, gestured for her to follow. Right now, what matters is getting you somewhere safe. Outside, his driver waited with the same black Mercedes from last night. Cupido opened the door for her personally. Michelle hesitated on the sidewalk, morning sun harsh after hours under fluorescent lights. Why are you helping me? Cupido's expression shifted, something old and painful flickering across his features before disappearing behind his usual control. Because good people shouldn't bleed for the crimes of the cruel, he said quietly. And because I owe a debt to someone who can't collect it anymore. He didn't elaborate, just waited for her to get in the car. Michelle slid into the back seat, exhausted, humiliated, but no longer alone. As they pulled away from the station, Cupido made a phone call. His voice was soft, deadly. It's time. Burn it all down. The safe house wasn't what Michelle expected. She'd imagined something dark and industrial. Concrete walls, armed guards, the kind of place you saw in crime movies. Instead, Cupido's driver pulled up to a renovated brownstone in a quiet neighborhood where tree branches stretched over brick sidewalks. This way. Cupido led her up the front steps, unlocked the door with a fingerprint scanner. Inside, the space was minimalist but warm hardwood floors, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a private garden, art on the walls that looked expensive but not showy, a place designed for someone who valued privacy over display. Michelle stood awkwardly in the entryway, still wearing yesterday's jeans and the sweatshirt the police had let her pull on. She felt like a stain on the clean surfaces. Sit, Cupido said, gesturing to the couch. You need food, coffee. I need answers. Michelle's voice came out stronger than she felt. Why are you doing this? You don't know me, and that debt you mentioned. Cupido disappeared into the kitchen without responding. Michelle heard the sound of an espresso machine, the clink of dishes. When he returned, he carried 2 cups of coffee and a plate with fresh pastries. He set them on the table, then sat across from her in a leather armchair. For a long moment, he just studied her, not threatening, just assessing. "Your last name is Hill," he said finally. "Yes. Your father. What was his name?" Michelle's chest tightened. "Daniel. Daniel Hill. He died when I was 7. Why?" Cupido pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then turned it toward her. The photo showed 2 men standing in front of a warehouse younger, maybe 15 years ago. One was Cupido, barely in his 20s, already carrying that dangerous edge. The other was a Latino man with kind eyes and Michelle's smile. Her father. Michelle's hand flew to her mouth. Where did you get this?" "Houston, March 2010. Cupido's voice was soft, careful. "Your father worked security for a shipping company. He didn't know what they were really moving. Neither did I, at first." He took a breath, seemed to be choosing his words with precision. "I was young, stupid, thought I could cut a deal with some people I shouldn't have trusted. It went wrong, very wrong. I was supposed to die in that warehouse." Cupido looked at the photo, something raw in his expression. "Your father found me, bleeding out behind shipping containers. He called an ambulance, stayed with me until they arrived, gave a statement to police that cleared me of involvement." Michelle set down her coffee with trembling hands. "I don't understand. He never..." "Because protecting me put a target on his back." Cupido's jaw tightened. "The people who wanted me dead found out who helped me. 2 weeks later, your father was killed in what the police called a random robbery. But it wasn't random, Michelle. They murdered him because he chose to save someone like me." The room tilted. Michelle gripped the edge of the couch. No, they said it was. The police said. The police were paid to say exactly what they were told." Cupido stood, walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Before the ambulance took me away, your father made me promise something. He said, 'If anything happens to me, if my daughter ever needs help, you find her, you protect her.' I asked why he would trust a stranger. He said, 'Because I see who you could become.'" Tears streamed down Michelle's face. "He died protecting you." "Yes, and you've been what? Watching me? Following me?" Cupido turned back to face her. "No. I lost track of you after you moved away from Houston. Your mother was smart, she changed addresses, kept you away from that life. But when you moved to this city 6 months ago, I was notified. I don't monitor you, Michelle. But I made sure that if you ever appeared on my radar in trouble, I would know." The gala. "I attend the Monteleone Foundation event every year. Obligation. When I saw you walk in wearing that uniform, I knew immediately who you were. You have his eyes." Cupido's expression softened slightly. "I planned to introduce myself properly afterward. Make sure you were safe in this city. Then Adrian Vance decided to humiliate you in front of 200 people." Michelle wiped her face with the back of her hand. "So this is what? Guilt? Obligation? This is a debt." Cupido's voice carried absolute certainty. "Your father gave his life because I mattered enough to save. The least I can do is make sure his daughter survives the cruelty of people who think money makes them gods." He sat back down, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. "I know you don't trust me. You shouldn't. I'm not a good man, Michelle. I've done things your father would have arrested me for. But I honor my debts, and I protect the people who deserve protection." Michelle's phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up, swiped through notifications. Her breath caught. Twitter was exploding. Not with mockery this time, with something else. At Finance Watch, breaking. Vance Industries stock down 8% in morning trading. Major investors pulling support. #Vance family. Michelle scrolled through dozens of similar posts. The narrative had shifted overnight from mocking the waitress to attacking the family. She looked up at Cupido. "Did you do this?" "I made 3 phone calls last night." His expression was neutral. Reminded certain people that supporting those who abuse service workers isn't good for business. The rest. He gestured at her phone. The rest is people remembering they have consciences. The Vances will retaliate. They already have. Cupido stood, walked to a desk, and pulled out a folder. He handed it to Michelle. Inside were photos, the jewelry box in her bag, the edited surveillance footage, police reports already filed. "They're not just trying to ruin your reputation," Cupido said quietly. "They're trying to destroy you completely, make you disappear into the legal system, where no one will care." Michelle's hands shook as she closed the folder. "So what do we do?" "We?" Cupido raised an eyebrow. "You said you protect people." I'm asking you to help me fight back. For the first time, Cupido smiled, not warmly, but with approval. Then we make them regret the day they learned your name. The news broke at 2 p.m. Michelle sat at Cupido's dining table, laptop open, watching the world turn against Adrian Vance in real time. At Investigative Daily. Exclusive. Adrian Vance's sealed juvenile records leaked. Multiple assault charges, all dismissed. Thread below. The thread was devastating. 2018. Adrian, age 15, arrested for assault against a scholarship student at his prep school. Charges dropped after Vance family donated new gymnasium. 2019. Sexual harassment complaint filed by a tutor. Settled privately. NDA signed. Tutor left the state. 2020. DUI arrest. BAC. 12. Officer reassigned. Case disappeared. 2021. Assault on a valet at a country club. Video evidence corrupted. Victim paid $50,000 to recant. Each revelation came with documentation, police reports with redacted sections, payoff receipts, emails from the Vance family lawyers to various officials. Someone had spent years collecting evidence that was supposed to stay buried forever. Michelle looked up at Cupido, who stood by the window on a phone call, speaking rapid Italian. You did this. He held up one finger. Wait. See? Complete. He ended the call, pocketed his phone. What was your question? The leaks. Adrian's records. You're exposing everything they tried to hide. I'm simply ensuring the truth has better lighting. Cupido moved to the table, scrolled through the thread. Adrian Vance has hurt people his entire life. The only difference between him and a common criminal is that his parents could afford to erase the consequences. Michelle's phone exploded with notifications. The hashtag Adrian Vance Eyes Over Party was trending nationally. News outlets were picking up the story. Activists were organizing. The video of Adrian pouring wine on her had been shared millions of times, but now the narrative had completely flipped. She was no longer the punchline. She was the victim who'd exposed a monster. This feels... Michelle struggled for words. Too fast. Too much. The Vances have spent decades building a reputation on lies. Cupido sat across from her. Lies collapse quickly when you remove the foundation. Right now, every person they've ever hurt, every family they've silenced, every official they've bribed, they're all watching, realizing the Vances can't protect them anymore. Michelle's laptop chimed with an email notification from Channel 7 News. Subject: Interview request. Your story matters. She clicked it open. They wanted her on camera. Primetime. Michelle Hill's fight against elite abuse. 3 more requests came in while she was reading CNN. Local news, a podcast with 2 million subscribers. They want to interview me. Michelle's stomach twisted. I don't know if I can. You don't have to. Cupido's voice was firm. You owe them nothing. Your trauma isn't content for their ratings. But if I don't speak, the Vances control the story. No. Cupido pulled up something on his phone, turned it toward her. The Vances lost control the moment they humiliated you publicly. The screen showed Vivian Vance's Instagram comments disabled, but the caption visible. Our family values dignity and respect. Recent allegations against our son are being thoroughly investigated. We stand by innocent until proven guilty. The post had 47,000 reactions. 46,000 were angry emojis. Michelle almost laughed. Almost. They're trying to play victim, which is why we need to hit harder. Cupido made another call. Sal. Release package 2. He hung up. What's package 2? Michelle asked. Video evidence. Security footage from the country club assault in 2021. The original, uncorrupted version. Cupido's expression was cold. Adrian put a 19-year-old valet in the hospital with a broken jaw because the kid parked his car too far from the entrance. The Vances paid everyone involved to destroy the footage, but you have it. I have everything, Michelle. I've been collecting insurance on powerful families for years. The Vances just gave me a reason to use it. Within an hour, the video was everywhere. Michelle watched it on mute, couldn't bear the sound. But the images were clear enough. Adrian, drunk, screaming at a young Latino man in a valet uniform, shoving him, then swinging, the kid's head snapping back, blood spraying from his mouth. Adrian kicking him while he was down. The comment section was a wildfire. Lock him up. This is who they protect. Privilege is a disease. Michelle Hill is a hero for surviving this family. Michelle closed the laptop, suddenly nauseous. That kid, the valet. Is he okay? He moved back to El Salvador with the settlement money. Started a small business. Cupido's tone softened slightly. I made sure he received the full amount the Vances paid his lawyers, not the fraction he actually saw. You've been watching them for years. I watch everyone who might become a problem. Michelle stood, walked to the window. Outside, the private garden was peaceful roses blooming, a stone fountain trickling water, everything calm while the world burned digital. My mom called, Michelle said quietly. 6 times. I haven't answered. She's worried. She's terrified, she thinks. Michelle's voice cracked. She thinks they'll kill me like they killed Dad. Cupido moved to stand beside her, not touching, just present. Your father died because I was careless, arrogant. I thought I was invincible. His reflection in the window was hard, haunted. I won't make that mistake with you. The Vances come near you. They don't walk away. That's what I'm afraid of. Michelle turned to face him. You're starting a war, Cupido. People could die. People already have died. They just had the wrong last names, so nobody cared. His steel-gray eyes met hers. The Vances have hurt hundreds of people, workers, students, anyone they considered beneath them. They've done it because they never faced consequences. That ends now. Michelle's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You stupid bitch. You're going to regret this. We know where you live. She showed it to Cupido without speaking. His expression went arctic. He took her phone, forwarded the message somewhere, then pulled out his own phone. Change of plans, he said into the receiver. Full protection detail, 24 hours. And find out who sent that text. I want a name in an hour. He ended the call, handed Michelle back her phone. Pack a bag. You're staying here until this is over. What about my apartment? Already being cleared. Your belongings will arrive tonight. Cupido's voice left no room for argument. The Vances just escalated from humiliation to threats. That means they're desperate. Desperate people make fatal mistakes. Michelle looked at the text message again. Fear coiled in her stomach, cold and sharp. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something harder. Anger. I want to do the interview, she said suddenly. Channel 7. Prime time. I want to tell my story. Cupido studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Then we make sure the world hears every word. The interview was scheduled for Thursday. Michelle never made it. Wednesday night, 11:47 p.m. She left Cupido's brownstone against explicit orders. Just for an hour, she'd told herself, just to clear her head. The walls were closing in. The viral videos, the constant notifications, the weight of becoming a symbol instead of a person. She needed air that wasn't filtered through security protocols. Cupido's driver had been dismissed for the evening. The protection detail wouldn't arrive until midnight shift change. Just a small window. Just enough time for a walk around the block. Michelle made it half a block before she realized her mistake. The street was too quiet. No cars. No pedestrians. The neighborhood that had felt safe in daylight now pressed in from all sides, dark brownstones, shadows pooling between streetlights, the distant hum of traffic that somehow made the silence worse. She turned back toward the safe house. A black SUV pulled around the corner. No headlights. Michelle's heart kicked into overdrive. She walked faster. The SUV accelerated, jumped the curb, cut her off. 3 men poured out ski masks, tactical gear, moving with military precision. No shouting, no warning, just efficient violence. Michelle ran. Her sneakers slapped against pavement. Behind her, footsteps heavy, fast, getting closer. She screamed, but the sound died in the empty street. Hands grabbed her jacket, yanked her backward. Michelle twisted, threw an elbow, connected with something solid. The man grunted but didn't let go. Got her. Bring the van. Another vehicle appeared, white panel van. No plates. The rear doors swung open. Terror flooded Michelle's system, sharp and animal. She kicked, bit, clawed anything to avoid being pulled into that van, because she knew with absolute certainty that if they got her inside, she would disappear. Another case gone cold. Another victim the Vances' money had erased. Stop fighting, bitch. Then gunfire shattered the night, not toward Michelle, toward the van. Bullets punched through the side panel, spiderwebbed the windshield. The driver dove out, scrambled for cover. More gunshots. The man holding Michelle released her, reaching for his own weapon. Michelle hit the ground, covered her head. Through the chaos, she heard a voice, Cupido's lieutenant, Sal, shouting in rapid-fire Italian. Return fire! Screaming. The screech of tires. Hands grabbed her again, but gentle this time. You're okay. I've got you. Sal pulled Michelle to her feet, shielded her body with his own, moved her quickly toward an armored car that had appeared from nowhere. Michelle's legs wouldn't work properly. Sal half-carried her into the back seat, slammed the door. Drive, now. The car peeled away from the curb. Michelle looked back through the rear window. 2 of the masked men were down, not moving. The others had scattered. The white van sat abandoned, smoking from bullet holes. What? Michelle couldn't catch her breath. How did you? Boss put trackers in everything you're wearing. Sal checked his gun, reloaded with practiced efficiency. Jacket, shoes, even your phone case. The second you left the perimeter, alarms went off. We were 30 seconds behind you. 30 seconds. The difference between rescue and disappearance. Michelle's hands trembled violently. Shock was setting in, cold spreading through her limbs, her teeth chattering despite the car's heat. Sal pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around her shoulders. Breathe. You're safe now. They were going to... Michelle couldn't finish the sentence. I know, but they didn't. The car pulled up to a different location, not the brownstone, somewhere more fortified. Concrete walls, security cameras, armed guards at every entrance. Sal led Michelle through multiple checkpoints until they reached an underground office. Cupido was waiting. He looked at Michelle, really looked, taking in her torn jacket, scraped hands, the wild fear still bright in her eyes. Something dangerous crossed his face, something that made even Sal step back slightly. Who sent them? Cupido's voice was terrifyingly calm, still identifying. Sal pulled out his phone, showed Cupido photos of the masked men. But the van was registered to a shell company, 3 layers deep, very professional. The Vances don't hire professionals directly. Cupido studied the photos. They use intermediaries, law firms, private security consultants, people who know how to keep their clients' hands clean. He looked at Michelle. Did they say anything? Any names, instructions, anything? Michelle shook her head. Just got her. And something about bringing the van. Her voice came out small, broken. They were going to make me disappear, weren't they? Cupido knelt in front of her chair, put himself at her eye level. Yes. The honesty was almost worse than a lie would have been, but they failed. Cupido's tone shifted, still serious, but with an edge of steel. And now they've crossed a line they can't uncross. Humiliation can be explained away. Framing you for theft can be blamed on overzealous security. But attempted kidnapping? That's desperation. That's fear. They're scared of you. They're scared of the truth. Cupido stood. Everything I've released, Adrian's assaults, the bribes, the cover-ups, it's all documented fact. But facts can be spun, buried, forgotten if you throw enough money at the problem. You, Michelle, are the living proof they can't erase. You're the face that turned the story from gossip into a movement. Michelle thought about the hashtags, the protests that had started forming outside Vance properties, the workers' rights advocates using her name. So they tried to erase me, and failed catastrophically. Cupido pulled out his phone, made a call. It's time. I want everything: financial records, offshore accounts, every illegal transaction from the last 15 years, and I want the names of everyone who helped them tonight. He hung up, looked at Sal. Double her protection. No one gets within 100 feet without 3 layers of verification. Boss, Sal hesitated. If we keep escalating, they might try something more extreme. Let them try. Cupido's expression went cold. Every move they make now proves what we've been saying. They're criminals hiding behind expensive suits and charity foundations. And I'm going to strip away every layer of protection until the whole world sees exactly what they are. Michelle pulled Sal's jacket tighter around her shoulders. Her fear was transforming into something harder, sharper. She thought about the white van, the efficiency of those men, how close she'd come to vanishing forever. I still want to do the interview, she said quietly. Both men looked at her. Michelle, Cupido started. No. Her voice was stronger now. They just tried to kidnap me because I'm telling the truth. Because I matter to your war against them. So let me fight. Let me tell everyone exactly what happened tonight. Let the world see how far they're willing to go. Cupido studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Thursday. Prime time. But we do it from here with full security. And Michelle? His steel-gray eyes held hers. After tonight, there's no going back. You understand that? Michelle thought about her father, about the debt he'd died for, about every person the Vances had hurt and erased. Good, she said. I don't want to go back. The interview aired at 8 p.m. Thursday. By 8:03, it had become the most watched live stream in Channel 7's history. Michelle sat across from journalist Patricia Moreno in Cupido's secure location, a room transformed into a professional studio, complete with lighting, cameras, and armed guards just off-screen. She'd chosen to wear simple clothes, jeans, a white blouse, minimal makeup. She wanted to look like herself, not a polished version the media could dismiss. Patricia leaned forward, voice gentle but direct. "Michelle, thank you for speaking with us. I know the past week has been traumatic. Can you tell us what happened the night of the Monteleone Gala?" Michelle took a breath. In the control room, Cupido watched multiple screens, the live feed, social media reactions, security cameras. Sal stood beside him, weapon ready, eyes on every entrance. "I was working my first event," Michelle began. Her voice wavered slightly, then steadied. "I'd just moved to the city. I needed the job. I was nervous, excited. I thought this was my chance to build something." She described the ballroom, the wealth, the invisible feeling of being staff, then Adrian's approach, the wine, the laughter. "He poured it over my head like I was nothing, like I was—" Michelle's throat tightened. "Like I was entertainment, something to laugh at and film and forget." Patricia's expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes held fury. "And his parents? They encouraged it. His mother filmed it. His father made a joke about me staining the carpet." That's when I understood this wasn't just cruelty. It was a statement about who matters and who doesn't. The interview moved through the timeline. The viral videos, the framing, the arrest. "They planted evidence in my bag," Michelle said, voice stronger now. "Edited security footage to make it look like I stole from them. I spent hours in a cell for a crime I didn't commit, all because I was the wrong kind of person in the wrong kind of place." Patricia pulled up images on the screen behind them. Adrian's leaked assault records, the valet beating video, documentation of bribes and payoffs. Since that night, extensive evidence has surfaced showing a pattern of violence and corruption in the Vance family. "How do you feel knowing you weren't their first victim?" Michelle looked directly at the camera. "Angry, and sad for everyone they hurt before me who couldn't fight back. But also," she paused, choosing her words carefully, grateful that maybe this time someone is listening. "There was an incident last night." Patricia's tone shifted. "Can you tell us what happened?" Michelle hesitated. Cupido had warned her this would be the hardest part, but also the most important. "3 men tried to kidnap me." The words landed like stones in water. "They knew where I was. They had a van. If I'd gotten inside," her voice cracked, "I would have disappeared, just like they wanted." Patricia pressed forward. "Do you have proof of this alleged kidnapping attempt?" "Yes." Michelle nodded to someone off camera. The screen behind her changed. Security footage appeared crystal clear, from multiple angles. The black SUV cutting her off, the masked men grabbing her, the white van pulling up, the gunfight, everything. But there was more. Additional footage began playing from inside the white van, recovered from the vehicle's dashboard camera. Audio of the men receiving instructions via radio. "Target is the Hill girl. Extraction only. No witnesses. Client wants her gone before the interview." Patricia's professional composure slipped. "And you believe the Vances ordered this? The shell company that owned the van?" "It's owned by another company. That company is owned by Vance Industries' private security division." Michelle pulled out documents, held them up to the camera. "We have the paper trail." Cupido had taught her well. Present facts. Show evidence. Let the audience draw their own conclusions. The interview continued for 40 minutes, Michelle describing her father's death, the connection to Cupido Bruno, why she refused to disappear quietly. "Some people say you're being used," Patricia said carefully. "That powerful people are fighting through you. That you're a pawn in someone else's war." Michelle met her eyes. "I'm not a pawn. I'm a person who was hurt, who was almost erased, and who decided to fight back. If powerful people want to help me do that," she shrugged, "then maybe some power can be used for something good." Patricia wrapped up the interview with a question about what came next. "Justice," Michelle said simply. "Not just for me, for everyone the Vances have hurt, for every worker who's been humiliated, for every family that took settlement money and signed NDAs because they couldn't afford to fight." Her voice carried absolute conviction. "No one should be disposable. Not ever." The camera held on her face for 3 seconds before cutting to commercial. In the Vance mansion, Harold threw his whiskey glass at the television screen. She had footage. Vivian paced frantically, phone pressed to her ear. Our lawyers said they promised us. Adrian sat on the couch, pale, scrolling through his phone with shaking hands. Every notification was another person turning against him. Friends unfollowing, brands cutting ties, death threats flooding his DMs. Dad, his voice cracked. Dad, they're saying I should go to prison. They're comparing me to— Shut up. Harold's voice was ice. Both of you, shut up while I think. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Mr. Vance. The voice was unfamiliar, professional. This is Special Agent Morrison with the FBI. We'd like to schedule a time for you and your family to come in for questioning regarding— Harold hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. FBI again. Then another call. And another. Federal agents, state investigators, the IRS, the SEC. Cupido had unleashed every alphabet agency at once. Vivian collapsed into a chair. We're finished. No. Harold's jaw tightened. We're not finished. We're Vance's. We own this city. His phone lit up with a news alert. Breaking. Major Vance Industries investors announce withdrawal of support. Stock in freefall. Company faces potential bankruptcy. At the secure location, Cupido turned off the monitors. It's done, Sal said quietly. No. Cupido watched Michelle through the observation window as makeup artists removed her microphone. This is just the beginning. They'll try to fight back. They always do. And if they come harder— Cupido's expression went cold. Then I stopped playing nice. Michelle emerged from the studio, exhausted but standing tall. She looked at Cupido. How bad? Their stock is collapsing. FBI is calling. Media has turned completely. He showed her his phone. Hundreds of supportive messages, worker advocacy groups, using her interview as a rallying cry. You did exactly what needed to be done. Michelle nodded slowly. Then— What happens now? Now? Cupido smiled not warmly, but with deadly satisfaction. Now we finish it. The call came at 3 a.m. Friday morning. Michelle woke to Cupido's voice in the hallway. Low, controlled, but carrying an edge she'd learned to recognize as dangerous. How many? Good. Make sure every camera is positioned correctly. I want them to see everything. She pulled on a sweatshirt and found him in the main room, dressed in the same immaculate black suit he'd worn the night of the gala. Sal stood nearby, checking weapons with methodical precision. What's happening? Michelle asked. Cupido turned. His steel-gray eyes held something she hadn't seen before, not anger exactly, but a cold satisfaction that made her shiver. The Vances called an emergency family meeting at their estate. 30 minutes ago. He checked his watch. They're trying to coordinate their legal defense, figure out how to stop the bleeding. They think they're safe behind their gates and security. And they're not. The FBI will be there in 2 hours with warrants. But we're going now. Cupido buttoned his jacket. I made your father a promise, Michelle, that if his daughter ever needed protection, I would provide it. But I made myself a promise, too, that the people who killed him would learn what it means to hurt the innocent. Michelle's breath caught. The Vances killed my father? Not directly. But they funded the operation that required silencing witnesses. Your father's death was collateral damage in their quest for profit. Cupido's voice was quiet, lethal. I've spent 15 years collecting proof. Tonight, they answer for it. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. My father, my right. Michelle's voice didn't waver. You said I wasn't a pawn, so don't treat me like one now. If this ends tonight, I need to see it. Cupido studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Stay behind me. Always. Understood? Understood. The Vance estate sprawled across 5 acres in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, iron gates, manicured gardens, a mansion that looked like it had been airlifted from a European palace. Security cameras dotted every corner. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. None of it mattered. Cupido's convoy of 3 black SUVs rolled up to the main gate at 3:47 a.m. The guard stepped out of his booth, hand moving toward his weapon. Sir, this is private property. Cupido's window lowered. He didn't speak, just looked at the guard with those winter steel eyes. The guard's hand dropped. He hit the button. The gates swung open. How did you— Michelle started. Everyone has a price. His was information that his employer has been under federal investigation for 6 months. Cupido's voice was flat. He's cooperating now. They parked directly in front of the mansion's main entrance, not subtle, not hiding. A statement. Sal and 4 other men exited first, weapons visible but not raised. Then Cupido, moving with that quiet authority that made people instinctively step aside. Michelle followed, heart hammering. The mansion loomed above them all, that wealth, all that power, concentrated in stone and glass and arrogance. Cupido didn't knock. He pushed open the front door. Inside, the foyer was exactly as Michelle had imagined. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art worth more than most people's houses. But instead of pristine elegance, the space felt desperate. Lights blazing at 4 a.m., voices shouting from deeper in the house, the smell of fear masked by expensive cologne. A private security guard rushed forward. "Sir, you can't." Sal moved like liquid. One moment the guard was reaching for Cupido. The next he was on the floor, weapon removed, arm twisted behind his back. "Stay down," Sal said quietly. "This doesn't concern you." Cupido walked through the house like he owned it. Michelle stayed close, trying to match his confidence even as her legs trembled. They found the Vances in the ballroom. The same ballroom from Michelle's nightmares. Same chandeliers, same marble floors, but stripped of the crowd, the music, the performance of civility. It looked smaller somehow, just a room where cruel people had laughed at cruelty. Harold Vance stood near the windows, phone pressed to his ear, arguing with someone about legal options. Vivian sat on a velvet couch, makeup smeared, expensive gown wrinkled. Adrian paced near the bar, drinking straight from a bottle of vodka despite his age. All three froze when Cupido entered. "Get out." Harold's voice tried for authority but landed on panic. "You have no right to be here. I'll have you arrested for breaking and entering. Sit down." Cupido's words weren't loud, but they carried absolute command. Harold's mouth opened, closed. Something in Cupido's expression made him slowly lower himself into a chair. Vivian found her voice. "You can't just walk into our home. We have rights. We have lawyers. You have nothing." Cupido moved to the center of the room, his men positioned at every exit. "No more politicians taking your calls. No more investors believing your promises. No more police looking the other way. Every protection you bought is gone." Adrian threw the vodka bottle. It shattered against the wall. "This is your fault. You're the one who started this. That bitch meant nothing." Michelle stepped forward before she could stop herself. "My name is Michelle Hill, and I'm standing right here." Adrian's eyes found her. Recognition flared, then shame, then rage, trying to mask the shame. "You ruined my life," he spat. "No." Michelle's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "You ruined your own life. I was just the first person who didn't disappear when you tried to erase me." Cupido raised a hand. Sal activated something on his phone. The ballroom's massive television screen flickered to life. "What is this?" Harold demanded. "The truth you've spent millions to bury." The screen showed documents, financial records, shell company transactions, money trails leading back 15 years. To Houston, to the warehouse where Michelle's father had died. Vance Industries needed that warehouse for pharmaceutical trafficking, Cupido narrated, voice clinical. Mexican cartels supplying, European distributors buying, with you as the middleman. Daniel Hill stumbled onto the operation while working security. He reported it. "You had him killed." That's ridiculous," Harold stammered. "We would never." Witness statements. The screen changed. Bank records showing payments to the men who murdered him. Emails from your private server. "Yes, Harold, I have those too, discussing the security problem that needed permanent resolution." Vivian made a sound like a wounded animal. "You can't prove." "I can prove everything." Cupido pulled out his phone. "And in approximately 90 minutes. So can the FBI. This isn't a negotiation. This is your reckoning." He turned to Michelle. "This room. This is where they humiliated you, where they laughed while you cried, where they tried to destroy your dignity because they thought you were powerless." Michelle looked around at the chandeliers, the marble, the family that had tried to erase her. She thought about her father, about every person the Vances had hurt, about the girl who'd walked in here a week ago just trying to work an honest job. "Apologize," Cupido said quietly. "All three of you. To her. Now." Silence. Then sirens in the distance. Getting closer. Harold's face went gray. "What did you do?" "I gave the FBI everything. They're here for you." Cupido checked his watch. "But before they arrive, before the cameras and the lawyers and the circus, you will look at Michelle Hill and acknowledge what you did." Adrian laughed high, breaking. "You're insane." "We don't apologize to." Sal moved. "Not threatening. just adjusting his position. The message clear. Vivian cracked first. Her voice caught. We shouldn't have. Say her name, Cupido commanded. Michelle. I'm sorry, Michelle. The words came out mechanical, empty. Harold stared at the floor. This is coercion. It won't hold up. The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights flashing through the windows. You're out of time, Cupido said. Federal agents are about to walk through that door with warrants for your arrest. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder. The pharmaceutical trafficking that killed Michelle's father. He stepped aside, gesturing to the entrance. You can walk out in handcuffs with whatever dignity you have left. Or my men can drag you. Choose. The front door burst open. FBI! Nobody move! Agents flooded the mansion, tactical gear, weapons drawn, moving with practiced precision. A woman in a dark suit stepped forward, badge raised. Harold Vance, Vivian Vance, Adrian Vance, you're under arrest. She began reading their rights. Michelle watched them being handcuffed, these people who'd tried to destroy her, who'd killed her father, who'd hurt countless others, and thought their money made them untouchable. Harold looked at Cupido as agents led him past. You won't get away with this. We have connections. We'll fight. Fight from prison. Cupido's voice was final. Where people like you belong. They were escorted out under the same chandeliers where they'd once held court. Past marble floors their money had bought. Through doors that would never open for them again. Michelle stood in the empty ballroom, Cupido beside her. Is it over? She asked quietly. The legal battle will take months. They'll try to plea down, make deals. Cupido turned to her. But their empire? Yes, that's over. Michelle looked up at the chandeliers, still glittering, still beautiful, but no longer terrifying. Thank you, she said, for seeing me when no one else did. Your father saw me when I was drowning. Cupido's expression softened slightly. This was always his debt to collect. I just made sure it was paid in full. Outside, the mansion was surrounded by federal vehicles, news crews already gathering beyond the gates. The story that would dominate headlines for months. But inside the ballroom, Michelle felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. 6 weeks later. The courtroom was packed journalists, activists, former victims of the Vance family, and dozens of cameras documenting every moment. Michelle sat in the front row, wearing a simple navy dress, her mother beside her. Adrian Vance stood at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his prep school arrogance stripped away by reality. His expensive lawyers surrounded him, but even they looked defeated. The evidence was too overwhelming, the public sentiment too poisonous. Judge Patricia Chen reviewed the charges with clinical precision. Mr. Vance, you've been charged with assault, evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. How do you plead? Adrian's lawyer leaned in, whispered urgently. Not guilty, Adrian said, voice cracking. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Everyone knew it was futile. The prosecution had surveillance footage, witness testimony, digital forensics, and most damaging, a dozen previous victims who'd finally found the courage to come forward. The trial proceeded with brutal efficiency. Prosecutor Rebecca Torres methodically presented each piece of evidence: the valet beating video, the assault records from prep school, the edited security footage from the Monteleone, and finally, the kidnapping attempt. Members of the jury, Torres said during her opening statement, this case is about power. About a young man who believed his family's wealth exempted him from consequences, who hurt people for entertainment, who, when finally exposed, tried to silence his victim permanently. She gestured to Michelle. Michelle Hill survived because she refused to be erased, because people with consciences decided enough was enough. But how many others didn't survive? How many took settlements and disappeared? How many are still too afraid to speak? Adrian's defense attorney tried to paint him as a troubled teenager, a victim of his parents' corruption, someone who'd made mistakes but deserved rehabilitation. The jury wasn't buying it. Michelle was called to testify on day 3. She walked to the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. When she sat down, she could feel 200 pairs of eyes on her, but this time, it felt different. This time, people were listening. Miss Hill, Torres began gently, can you describe what happened the night of May 15th at the Monteleone Gala? Michelle took a breath. Over the past 6 weeks, she'd told this story dozens of times to FBI agents, to journalists, to advocacy groups, but saying it here, under oath, with Adrian 10 feet away, felt like closing a circle. I was working my first event. I was nervous, but excited. Her voice was steady. Adrian Vance called me over. He made a comment about the help, then poured wine over my head while guests filmed and laughed. She described every detail, the coldness of the wine, the heat of the humiliation, the way his parents encouraged it. The courtroom was silent except for her voice. What did you feel in that moment? Torres asked. Invisible. Like I didn't matter. Like my dignity, my humanity. It was all just entertainment for people who'd never had to work for anything. Michelle looked directly at Adrian. I felt like he wanted to erase me. Adrian looked away. And what happened after you were arrested on false theft charges? Someone tried to kidnap me. 3 men, a white van, very professional. Michelle's hands tightened in her lap. If I'd gotten in that van, no one would have ever found me. Torres played the security footage, the attack, the struggle, the rescue. Several jurors visibly reacted. During cross-examination, Adrian's attorney tried to suggest Michelle had provoked the wine incident, that she'd been standing too close, that Adrian had been drinking. So being drunk excuses assault? Michelle asked quietly. I'm not saying that, because that's what you're implying. That somehow I deserved to be humiliated because a privileged teenager was drinking at a charity event he wasn't legally old enough to drink at. The attorney moved on quickly. Other victims testified. The valet with the broken jaw, Jorge Mendez, who'd flown in from El Salvador. 2 prep school students Adrian had assaulted. A tutor he'd sexually harassed. Each one adding weight to the prosecution's case. Harold and Vivian Vance testified too, trying to protect their son, but their own criminal charges undermined their credibility. The jury watched them with open contempt. On the final day of testimony, Torres presented phone records showing Adrian had made calls to the security company that attempted Michelle's kidnapping. His lawyer scrambled to explain it away, unauthorized use of his phone. Corporate security gone rogue, but the timeline was too damning. Closing arguments lasted 6 hours. Adrian's attorney painted him as a product of toxic parenting, someone who'd never learned empathy because he'd never faced consequences. He's 19 years old, still a teenager. He deserves a chance at rehabilitation, at becoming someone better. Torres countered with precision. The defendant isn't on trial for being born wealthy. He's on trial for choosing repeatedly, deliberately to hurt people. For using his family's power to escape justice. For trying to kidnap a woman whose only crime was surviving his cruelty. She paused. Michelle Hill was invisible to Adrian Vance. Just like Jorge Mendez was invisible. Just like every person he's hurt was invisible. This verdict makes them visible. It says they matter. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Michelle waited in a private room with her mother, Cupido standing guard outside. She couldn't eat, couldn't focus. Just watched the clock and wondered if justice was really possible for people like her. At 4:37 p.m., the jury returned. The courtroom reassembled. Michelle took her seat, her mother squeezing her hand. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Chen asked. We have, Your Honor. Michelle's heart hammered so hard she thought everyone could hear it. On the count of assault in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of evidence tampering? Guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit kidnapping? Guilty. Adrian's face crumpled. His mother sobbed from the gallery. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Adrian shook it off. Judge Chen continued reading guilty on 8 of 9 charges. The only acquittal was on a technical obstruction charge. Mr. Vance, Judge Chen said, you will be remanded to custody until sentencing. Bail is revoked. Guards moved forward. Adrian stood on shaking legs as they handcuffed him. As they led him past Michelle's row, he stopped, looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Michelle didn't respond, didn't nod, just held his gaze until the guards pulled him away. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered protesters with signs reading, Justice for Michelle, and No one is disposable. News crews fighting for position, worker advocacy groups chanting. Michelle emerged with her mother, Cupido a step behind. The crowd erupted in cheers. A reporter thrust a microphone toward her. Michelle, how do you feel about the verdict? Michelle paused on the courthouse steps. Behind her, the building where justice had finally been served. Before her, hundreds of people who'd turned her trauma into a movement. I feel seen, she said simply. For the first time since this started, I feel like someone who matters. What's next for you? Michelle glanced back at Cupido, who nodded slightly. I'm starting a foundation, she said. The Daniel Hill Worker Protection Fund. For service workers who face abuse, discrimination, or assault on the job. For people who can't afford lawyers or bail or the time it takes to fight back. So no one else has to be invisible. The crowd cheered louder. As Michelle walked down the courthouse steps, her mother on one side and Cupido on the other, she felt something shift inside her. The girl who'd been humiliated in that ballroom was gone. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone who'd looked at power and refused to blink. Adrian Vance would be sentenced to 15 years in prison 3 weeks later. But for Michelle, justice had already been served the moment the jury said those 2 words, guilty. 1 year later, the Monteleone ballroom glowed with the same golden light Michelle remembered: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, the soft murmur of conversation among guests in evening wear. But everything else had changed. Michelle Hill walked through the main entrance, not the service entrance this time, wearing a tailored emerald dress that her mother had helped her choose. Her dark hair was styled in elegant waves, diamond earrings catching the light. She moved with quiet confidence, acknowledging the scattered applause as she entered. At 22, Michelle had become something she never imagined. A symbol. The Hill Foundation had dispersed over $2 million in legal aid to service workers in its first year. She'd testified before Congress about worker protections, been featured in Time magazine, spoken at universities about dignity, justice, and refusing to be erased. But tonight wasn't about speeches or advocacy. Tonight was personal. Miss Hill, the event coordinator, a kind woman named Sandra, who'd apologized profusely for what happened a year ago, greeted her warmly. "We're so honored you accepted our invitation. Thank you for having me." The Monteleone Foundation had invited Michelle to their annual gala as the guest of honor. A different board now ran it, the Vance family's influence completely excised. The event benefited worker assistance programs and featured testimonials from people the foundation had helped, people like Michelle used to be. She moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, posing for photos with supporters. Some guests treated her like a celebrity. Others seemed uncomfortable, reminded of their own complicity in systems that enabled the Vances. Michelle handled both with grace she'd learned through necessity. Her mother appeared beside her, wearing a navy gown Michelle had bought her. "Mija, there are so many people here. Are you okay?" "I'm good, Mama." Michelle squeezed her hand. "This time I belong here." Near the bar, she spotted familiar faces: Jorge Mendez, the valet Adrian had assaulted, now working as the foundation's community outreach coordinator. 2 of Adrian's prep school victims, who'd become advocates themselves. A network of survivors who'd transformed their pain into purpose. The crowd parted slightly, and Michelle saw him. Cupido Bruno stood near the back entrance, same position as a year ago, watching everything with those steel-gray eyes. He wore an immaculate black suit, looking like he'd stepped out of a different era, dangerous, protective, eternal. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Michelle excused herself, walked through the crowd toward him. People watched, everyone knew the story by now. The Mafia boss who'd waged war for a waitress, but no one interfered. "You came," Michelle said when she reached him. "I was invited." The corner of Cupido's mouth lifted slightly. "Though I suspect some board members are regretting that decision. Let them be uncomfortable. You're the reason any of this exists." "No." Cupido's voice was firm. "You're the reason. I just removed obstacles." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the gala unfold around them. So similar to last year, yet completely different. "The Vances?" Michelle asked quietly. "Harold and Vivian are in federal prison, 15 and 12 years respectively. No parole." Cupido's tone was matter of fact. Their assets were seized, divided among their victims as restitution. The mansion was sold. Vance Industries dissolved. And Adrian? Still serving his sentence. Eligible for parole in 8 years if he demonstrates rehabilitation. Cupido looked at her. "He writes you letters." Michelle nodded. She'd received dozens, all unopened, stored in a box she wasn't ready to face. "I don't know if I'll ever read them." "You don't have to. Forgiveness isn't mandatory. Did you forgive them?" Cupido was quiet for a long moment. "I don't forgive people who hurt the innocent, but I sleep better knowing they can't hurt anyone else." Michelle thought about her father, about the debt that had brought her here. The man she'd never really known but whose protection had saved her life. "My father would have liked you," she said softly. "Your father was me, before I became this." Cupido gestured at himself. He saw potential for something better. "I try to honor that." A bell chimed. Dinner was being served. The crowd moved toward the tables. "Join us," Michelle said. "There's a seat at the head table. I don't do well with formality." Neither did I. A year ago, I was serving these people. Now I'm sitting with them. Michelle smiled, genuine. No performance. Come on, you've earned it. Cupido hesitated, then nodded. They walked to the head table together. Michelle's mother was already seated, along with foundation board members, major donors, and survivors the foundation had helped. There was an empty chair between Michelle and her mother, the seat of honor. Cupido sat carefully, looking distinctly uncomfortable among the formal place settings and flower arrangements. Michelle's mother leaned over. Mr. Bruno, thank you for protecting my daughter. Senora Hill. Cupido's voice softened. Your husband saved my life. Protecting Michelle was the least I could do. Still, you gave her a chance when everyone else looked away. Her mother's eyes were bright. That matters. Dinner proceeded with speeches, testimonials, updates on the foundation's work. Michelle gave a brief address thanking supporters, highlighting victories, acknowledging that the fight for worker dignity was ongoing. When dessert was served, she found herself looking around the ballroom at the same chandeliers, the same marble floors where she'd once stood dripping wine and tears. You're quiet, Cupido observed. Just thinking. Michelle turned to him. A year ago I was invisible here. The help, someone to ignore or mock. Now I'm the guest of honor. It's surreal. You were never invisible. You just hadn't found the right people to see you. Thank you for being one of those people. Your father made me promise. I don't break promises to the dead. Michelle watched the crowd, so many faces that had witnessed her humiliation now celebrating her strength. It felt like vindication and sadness mixed together. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been there that night? She asked. Cupido considered this. Someone else would have helped eventually. You're too strong to stay down. I don't feel strong. The strong rarely do. He looked at her seriously. Strength isn't feeling invincible. It's standing back up after being knocked down. You've done that every day for a year. The evening wound down. Guests began leaving, thanking Michelle, promising donations, taking photos. Through it all, Cupido remained nearby, not hovering, just present, a guardian who'd never stopped watching. Finally, near midnight, the ballroom was nearly empty. Staff cleaned tables. Musicians packed instruments. The magic hour when events transformed back into ordinary rooms. Michelle stood in the center of the ballroom, exactly where she'd stood when Adrian poured wine over her head. Cupido approached quietly. What are you thinking? That I survived. Michelle's voice was soft but certain. They tried to destroy me, humiliate me, frame me, kidnap me, erase me. But I'm still here, and they're not. Empires fall faster than tears dry, Cupido said. I told you that. You were right. Michelle looked up at the chandeliers, still beautiful, no longer terrifying. My father protected you. You protected me. Now I protect others. It's a strange kind of legacy, the best kind, built on people choosing to stand up. Michelle turned to face him fully. What happens now? The foundation is established. The Vances are in prison. Your debt is paid. Cupido smiled, rare, genuine. My debt to your father is paid. But I think I've developed a personal interest in seeing you continue this work, if you'll allow me to remain involved. As what? My guardian angel with tattoos? Something like that. Michelle laughed, really laughed. The kind that comes from relief and joy mixed together. I'd like that. They walked toward the exit together, past marble floors and crystal chandeliers, through doors that had once felt like barriers between worlds. Outside, the city stretched before them, lights glittering like fallen stars, the endless possibility of midnight in a place where anything could happen. Michelle's mother waited by the car, but Michelle paused on the steps. Thank you, she said again to Cupido, for seeing me when no one else did. Cupido's steel-gray eyes held hers with something like respect, like pride. Always protect the ones the world tries to step on, he said quietly. That's how you build something worth keeping. Michelle nodded, understanding, settling deep in her bones. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning of a foundation that would help thousands, of a movement that would change how workers were treated, of a legacy built not on wealth or power but on refusing to let cruelty win. She walked down the steps to her mother, to the car, to whatever came next. Behind her, the Monteleone ballroom's lights dimmed one by one, chandeliers going dark. The place where she'd been invisible had witnessed her transformation. Where she'd been humiliated, she'd found her voice. Where she'd cried, she now stood victorious. And somewhere in a prison cell, Adrian Vance stared at walls and wondered how a single act of cruelty had cost him everything. But Michelle wasn't thinking about him anymore. She was thinking about tomorrow, about the next person who needed help, about using her visibility to illuminate others still standing in shadows. The night that had begun with wine and laughter and cruelty had ended with justice, dignity, and something even more powerful, hope. Thanks for staying with this story, right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.